Okay, so we have a shuttle map that's powered by the data that's managed by the transportation office, and the weather, which we have from a third-party vendor. And also, each one of these screens, they don't all display the same information. We have about 20 of these screens throughout the med school campus, and they're all individually configurable. So you could limit the screen that's in the surgery hallway to just show surgery people and surgery news, or you could mix and match if they wanted to show news from the whole School of Medicine, but they only want to promote their people. You can configure it by the module on the screen. So anyway, as for the actual website itself, this was the first iteration of the digital signage site. We called it the Flyboy at the time because it had a module. I should have actually taken a screenshot of that. But it looked like a bulletin board, and you could put flyers for events, upload them as PDFs, and they would appear. It was cute, but sort of duplicative of the calendar information that we already had. And the problem with this version is that, as you can see, everything's really tiny, so unless you're already standing right in front of the screen, you might not really be able to tell what's going on.
Also, no one touched it.
Right. Yeah. So why did we redesign this UI? So it looked old. As you could see, it's not exactly the most modern-looking app. The content was too crowded. We wanted to eliminate some of the types of content we were showing, like that cute flyer board that we had that looked like a bulletin board. It just wasn't really... It was kind of interesting, but it wasn't really the best way to get the calendar information out there to people. And like Justin said, it did not really look like it was interactive. It kind of just looks like you're seeing feeds of data. So in our new website, this is just a preview of what the news module looks like. You can see right away that would sort of cut down on the amount of content we're showing at once, kind of making it really easy. Either you can go right or you can check out one of these other modules, sort of streamline all of the content we have there. And then here, I'll just show you a few examples of the various modules that we have installed. So this is the weather. This is currently powered by a third-party API, Open Weather Map. We're actually looking to change vendors because Open Weather Map seems really trigger happy when it comes to reporting precipitation, and it's telling people that it's even if it's like a 5 or 10% chance of rain, it's telling people it's raining, and it's not exactly the most accurate. So we're working on updating that to a more accurate API from Dark Sky. This is our shuttle map. This is actually a custom map that we built on the double map feeds that the transportation office uses. So as you probably know, the transportation office produced their own shuttle map using the double map app. I think double map, it's actually just the default sort of presentation that they provide once you plug in all the data. But we actually went ahead and we're using the feeds from double map to power our own custom map so that we can optimize it for display on these screens.
We use a tool called Mapbox to provide the mapping layer, which gives you greater flexibility in the information that you show and high resolution data than like the Google API. And it's also much cheaper if anyone's looking to do mapping stuff.
Yeah, one problem with Google was that you'd have all the little pins for the various businesses and stuff. Oh, sorry.
How is it connected to the announcements? Like in the main atrium at SHM, 333-seater, there's these wonderful images that come up that the red shuttle is arriving.
Yes, I'm going to get there. Okay. I'm going to get there in a little bit.
Fabulous.
Yes, we're getting to that. Yeah, so the one of the issues with Google is just you don't have as much control over limiting the data that displays, and we just wanted to let people know what street they're looking at, obviously, but focus on where the shuttle is.
Google's also much more expensive since they started charging for their API. We pay about $400 a month to Google right now to use their API to do mapping on all of the School of Medicine's web infrastructure. And Mapbox is, I don't know, a quarter of that price for the same amount of volume.
Yes? What does API mean?
It's a data feed. I can't remember what it's called. Automated something or another. Data something protocol. I can't remember what it stands for. I should probably know that.
Yeah.
But I don't.
I should too.
Is Mapbox open source or built on open source?
I don't think so, because it's a for-profit organization. They you just create an account with them. There's a certain number of calls that you can make for free, and then they start charging you per call.
Okay, and then additionally, moving on, we have the calendar module, which is just pulling in from the YSM calendar, which unfortunately is totally separate from the Yale BWorks calendar, and also the student one, the org. Yes, that one. That's used for a lot of the student events. A project that's been on our back burner forever is to actually make some kind of integration with BeadWorks. So we'll get to that once we finish rebuilding all the other applications we need to rebuild. Sure.
Then how do you get those events on here? Like, let's say someone needed to get an event on here from BeadWorks.
So this is through the School of Medicine profile system again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you go to, so everyone at the university actually has access to the profile system. It's just unless your profile is displaying somewhere, which if you're not in the School of Medicine, it's probably not displaying anywhere. It's not really going to do much for you.
Anyone with a NetID can log in to profile.yale.edu, and you can submit a calendar event, and you can tag that event with the calendars on which you would like that event to appear, and then it goes into an approval queue that an administrator for that calendar would approve. So people across the university who want to add events to our signage could do that. It's just not automatically approved. It goes into an approval queue.
I think they do that I think they have to get that stuff approved through OPAP on the regular events calendar for the university also for anyone.
I think you're right.
There's always an approval process.
Yeah, ours is distributed, so there's somebody in surgery who they will put in charge of approving the events for the surgery queue and so on.
So if you put a calendar event into our system and you tag it with 15 different calendars, that event will likely go to 15 different people to approve on their calendars.
Yeah.
If it's approved on one calendar but declined on another, the event would appear on that one but not appear on the other one. So it's highly distributed.
Yep.
Those are only the departments that are on the profile system, right? Bedside,
Yeah, right now it's only implemented on
so it's not university-wide.
technically all the backend functionality works, but like I was saying earlier, unless your website is pulling from our profile system feeds, yeah, it's not going to go anywhere. So, yeah. Okay, so moving on, we also have this people module, which is based off the foundation of the profile system, which is our people profiles. We just show a limited view of the there's a ton of information that faculty especially can enter in their profiles, like their past education, activity abroad, anything you could think of, different talks they've done.
They can actually they can put anything in the profile system that they would use to create a CV. So it also functions as a CV builder. So it contains a wealth of information that faculty could put in that they wouldn't necessarily make public on a profile, but it just resides in the system for CV purposes.
Yeah. And for the purposes of the signage screen, people are like standing in front of a screen in a public place, so we just limited it to like their title and bio and a couple other, like their physical location if they've entered that in the system. Yes?
How long have you set it to be for these things to be out for? How long, or it doesn't work that way? Like,
So you wouldn't actually see the screen unless you started interacting with it, at which point you could browse it through it as long as you want. So I should have pointed out, I made it more clear, these are all touch screens, so they're all interactive. So once you start interacting with it, unless you don't touch it for, I think, 15 minutes, you could stay on one profile as long as you want. So
people queuing up to touch it, or like how is it working? Like in the
I
reality?
don't know how it's, I haven't really, we just rolled this out last Thursday. So we don't really have meaningful analytics yet.
Right.
And I actually haven't physically been to the locations. Luckily, we haven't had, aside from this morning, we haven't had any issues with outages. So I haven't had to physically visit any of these screens since we rolled out the new. I think it's 18 right now.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think it's
I
18.
just ordered 6 more though.
Yeah.
It's just always a matter of getting them installed because you have to convince people, and we have to convince buildings to let us,
Yes.
actually put it somewhere. Like an architecturally sensitive building like this, is not eager for us to go mount a screen somewhere that
Yeah.
the original design did not call for a screen.
Yep.
So it's touchscreen.
Yeah. Sorry, in the back.
As far as the touch screen, like what's drawing people to it, the tabs on the bottom were helpful to understand, oh, I have choices here. So
Great.
that was our experience since
Good.
last Thursday.
Awesome.
What is your default screen and how does it scroll?
We're getting there, and we're going to get to the track screens in a minute. Sorry, I should have started with that, I guess. So just a couple more modules, and then we'll get to the track screens. So this is the news module. This is very similar to Calendar. It's just recent news articles. There's a lot more content options here. You can the editors can embed images. When these articles appear on the website, there's even more information like related people, related documents, and things like that if people have added them. But again, we're trying to streamline this information for somebody who's just walking by and maybe spends a minute or two at this screen. So we're
The
just...
other thing that's important to note, sorry.
No, that's fine.
The other thing that's important to note is that when people are adding content to these screens, they don't usually know that they're actually adding content to the screens. So they go in the profile system, they have a news article that they want to put on their website. They load that news article in, they tag it with their organization. If their organization has a digital signage screen, or they tag that news article to appear on the main School of Medicine's news feed, then it automatically shows up in Signage. So people aren't actually thinking about the content that they're curating for these screens. We found that if you ask people to manage content on these screens, they're not going to do it. They won't think about it, they forget about it, they get busy. So part of our thought process around these screens is to make it invisible to the content editors who are actually managing content for organizations. So they put in a calendar event for their organization that's going to appear here. A news article that's going to appear here. A new person joins Yale, it will appear here. So it's all meant to be automated.
Okay. Okay, and then we have a video module. It's pretty self-explanatory. These can be curated by whoever the owner of the screen is. I think right now only the screens managed by our office have any videos, but it's an option to have. And they're fully closed captions are supported. So if it's in a public place where they don't necessarily, maybe it's a quieter area, but they still want a screen, they can mute the screen and people can still watch the video with the captions and get at least some of the effect of watching the video, even without sound. Lastly, we have the international activity module, which is pretty cool. It depends on the data that the faculty have put into the system, but whenever a faculty member participates in any kind of activity abroad, whether it's a guest lecture or participating in some research with a lab or attending a conference, they can add that activity to their profile with a geolocation, and then it will pop up on this international activity map that appears both on the School of Medicine website and on our touchscreens. And again, this is configurable to each screen. So like the screen in 333 Cedar shows everybody in the School of Medicine, but internal medicine, if they wanted, I think they're only showing internal medicine people. So as long as they have enough activity in the department, then it looks really great when you start browsing around. And it's kind of fun to just look around and see what people are up to across the globe. Okay, and this, I guess, is what everybody's excited about. So the new concept of digital signage 2 were these attract screens, which display when nobody is interacting with the screen. So the purpose of these screens was to promote timely content to people who are just walking by the screen. Because the idea is we have great content if you actually walk up and start touching the screen, but how are you going to know that what's on the screen if you see it across the room and this font is this big and you can't really actually read the title? So we have these screens that were designed to just feature one item or one module and make that appear really big so that somebody who's across the room could say, oh, maybe I'm interested in that article and I want to read more about it.
These are also created to have personality. So the firm that we hired to do the design work is British, and they got very cheeky with the words that they wrote. Some of the attract screens that they wrote, we actually couldn't put up. One of them for the people module said, find anyone anywhere at Yale, and
It sounded a little too creepy.
it sounded a little.
Yeah, so I did my best to impersonate the cheeky tone of these screens, but for example, this is a news attract screen. And this will just choose a random article from some of the more recent articles, and it just plops the title up there, and hopefully it has a thumbnail, and just gives the users a link to read that article. I believe it does have to have a thumbnail, yeah, to appear. That's probably one of the rules that we set. I think you're right. Then we have the most popular thing on the touchscreen is probably the weather, so put together some attract screens that have to do with the current or immediately forecasted weather conditions. And this is the one that appears sometimes even when it's not raining, which is why we're going to switch our weather API.
We also integrated it with the National Weather Service's weather alerts. So if there's kind of a severe weather alert that comes through, that will pop up on the screen.
Yep. This is a calendar, an event attract screen. It looks a bit funky on here because I captured this on my desktop, and this site is optimized for those 4K screens. But there can be different messages, so everybody is attracted to food and refreshments at events, so I figured that would be a good idea. But in addition, if an event is tagged as a training opportunity, there's a specific attract screen message for that. If there are grand rounds coming up, then we promote that because those are pretty popular at the school. This attract screen in particular with the food pointed out some data issues that we had in our calendar. Because when we first created this screen, the food field in the calendar module of the profile system was just free text. So we got some really interesting attract screen messages like, don't miss this event, there will be none. Don't miss this event, there will be water, which is really kind of sad. Or there will be Cheez-Its, which actually personally that would have really made me want to attend. So we added a type that people could choose from to make things more generic, like breakfast, lunch, dinner, coffee, drinks, to make this work a little bit better. Also, you could imagine that some of these screens, the text can get kind of long depending on sometimes the title of the event or what people have tagged it with. So we implemented some logic that resizes the font size to accommodate the length of the message, but we actually ran into a bug with that where everything got reduced to somehow 1 pixel high, and then someone in our office thought that the screen had actually burned out some pixels, but it turned out that was actually the attract screen message. It's just really too small for anyone to ever read. So we have these shuttle attract screens. This can be configured a few different ways. So if it's in a place like 333 Cedar, I think this is actually not true, but so there's actually a stop right at 333 Cedar. So an attract screen like this would make perfect sense. The orange bus is here, or will be here, in a couple minutes. But in some locations, you might not necessarily be really close to a stop, or you might be close to several stops. So you can configure it to show, to pull data from multiple Yale shuttle stops, and all these screens will be queued appropriately, and it'll actually combine arrival messages if they're really close together. Although we limited it to 2 because otherwise the messages would get really, really long if you were trying to say that there are 3 different shuttles all arriving at this one location in 10 minutes. It would just be too much information to really digest easily. So you could show up to 2 different arrivals at once at the same stop. Okay. And then lastly, we have some of these static screens that don't change all that much. This particular attract screen promotes a video module. So it's sort of dynamic in that it will promote the several different videos. It'll just highlight the thumbnail from one of those. And you saw I led with this. This screen doesn't change. It just says, hey, we have this international activity module that you might want to check out. Okay, so how this stuff works. We use Rise Vision Player to actually manage the hardware. We also have, this UI that displays is a website that you could access on any device. It's just probably not going to look great if you look at it on a phone because it's optimized for a huge screen. And the attract screen, that the manager that queues up these various messages, is actually a separate application from the website that's just evaluating the information that's available from our profile system and queuing up the messages appropriately so that they're ready for each of the configured sites. When they say, I need a new attract screen, this separate application has already queued up that one and several others behind it. So the way Rise Vision works, I just took a little screen capture from the interface. Don't worry about that offline one, that's just the dev screen, so we're okay. But Rise Vision is pretty good. It allows you to view whether your devices are online or not, which obviously is important because these things are just bricks if they don't have a network. Rise is free to use, but we actually opted in for a paid-for plan, which is still pretty cheap. It's several thousand a year.
$1,500 a year.
Yeah.
For all of our students.
So it's not too expensive. That allows us to get alerts when these things go down, and it also allows us to have some storage space on their site for if we wanted to show, which hopefully we won't, but if we wanted to show a custom slideshow aside from the website that normally displays, we could do that. We could use their storage, and it's very easy to create a presentation. Sorry.
Do we understand that Rise Vision is not supported by the university?
Yes.
The university doesn't have a digital signage organization, and so there is no organization at the university that will support your hardware if you install these.
When we started the rebuild of this project, we were led to believe that Rise would probably become supported by the university, which I guess didn't turn out to happen, but
It was, and then now it's not.
yeah, it was kind of on the road to be, and now it's not, and I'm not sure what the new tool is, but actually we've been having pretty good luck with this. Whenever one of these screens goes offline and we can't fix it through Rise, it means I have to get on my bike and ride over to that screen, and usually I just need to manually restart it unless there's some kind of network issue, but I haven't had to do that in a while, and I'm crossing my fingers. So the software does work pretty well. Sorry?
It's really tough for training new users, if departments are installing screens and they're kind of left to their own devices to figure out how it all works.
Yeah, we totally manage we let them manage like the physical installation, but when we actually get to, basically the department's on the hook for installing the network and power, and then we have a vendor who has mounted, I think, all 18 of these screens for us that we work with. I will come, sometimes he'll install it himself and then I'll come after, but I'll usually be there myself to actually set up the screen in the first place to get it rolling.
It's fairly simple. It's just a touch screen, so it's just a monitor that's a touch screen that's large. That costs, the 58-inch screens that are 4K touch cost about $3,200 through the connection. And then we attach a computer to the back of it, so it's just a computer that comes preloaded with Rise Vision already on it, and it's about $600. And so those are the two components, and then the department makes sure that there's power and network at the location. We don't rely on wireless. You could, but we don't because it's sometimes unreliable. And then it just plugs into the wall. So from a hardware perspective, there's not that much to manage ongoing. The computers have Windows on them. They run Windows updates regularly. There's just not that much to manage.
So in internal communications, we're using Rise Vision, but it's not web-based. So let's say we wanted to go to web-based. Do we have to be part of Profile? I mean, how do you get...
So Rise is totally separate from Profile. This is all we're not doing much at all with Rise Vision, aside from monitoring if these screens are live or not. Like, there's a screen capture tool where you can get a capture of what's currently displaying on the screen. And all we're doing is pointing it at a URL. If you go into the configuration for each screen, it's just pointing at the Signage website with an ID for the version of the website with the correct configuration that we want to display at that location. And that's it.
So we don't need profiles to have it be web-based or
It's
not.
totally separate from Profile System.
It's just a web?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, the Rise Vision, are you buying the licensed players or are you buying just the computer and putting the software on it?
We're buying the license player. Yeah.
Is there a reason for that? Is it already pre-installed? Or?
It's just, it was easier.
It's just easier.
Yeah. We tried to,
We've been thinking about getting a higher performing computers, but the Nooks that we have been working okay so far.
I use Raspberry Pis because we only really show images, but I was wondering about how their players are with video. And
this one's been great.
Yeah.
The $600 version has, is it an i5?
the Intel i5.
I think it's an
I
i5.
think so.
Yeah. I mean, it's
I
not
think so.
super high performance,
No.
but for the animations that we've run and the video, it's all very smooth.
Mhm.
It's working fine.
Thanks.
Sometimes the really high resolution images take a little bit to load, but oddly the videos are pretty smooth. So
We're also we run behind all of our websites a caching service called Nginx that is globally caching content that makes it way faster. So that's also behind us and helps. Vincent, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just was curious about, because I built a little bit in Rise Vision, and I was wondering if those displays, are they just displaying like a full web page in Rise Vision, or are you actually using the component builder in Rise Vision?
I'm not using the component builder at all. I'm just making a URL presentation. This website is totally taking over the screen.
Do the monitors have to be clean? Do they get smudged?
They do get smudged, and we don't really have a great solution for this yet, because I'm not a big fan of having to go myself to wipe off these things every month or something. But
They magically get cleaned occasionally.
yeah, I do worry about somebody using something they shouldn't on the screen. I think we need, if
But
we
also
don't have them now.
the lifespan on these screens is not more than 5 years.
Right.
We bizarrely in 2011 or so, we were working with a local vendor who actually kind of started this project for us, and he installed these super old giant screens. They were cutting edge at the time, and those are the only ones that have lasted. Like they're all still in service and working.
Somehow.
As we deployed new screens, they last maybe 3 to 5 years, and then they crap out, and we have to replace them.
Just after the warranty expires, usually.
Yeah, right. It's just after the warranty.
Just as they planned. Okay. And then I already talked about the website itself quite a bit, but it's a .NET Core application. It's a single-page application. Uses React.js. The design firm that we hired we actually primarily hired this design firm to revamp the School of Medicine desktop, mobile, tablet websites. But it just so happened that this firm specializes in digital signage as well. So it was a really perfect opportunity to have them redesign the signage as well. And one of the goals of this project was the old flyer board website really didn't look like the School of Medicine website at all. So now the designs that you see on this website are pretty much exactly lifted out of the designs that we'll be rolling out to the School of Medicine websites in August. So we'll have a more consolidated appearance here. And again, we have streamlined content. We're not showing people like 3 different columns of information anymore. You're really trying to focus on that one thing at a time. And lastly, the attract screen. The manager, as I mentioned, it's a separate application from the website itself that displays. It's continually evaluating information that's available from the weather API, from the double map feeds, from our profile system feeds, and queuing up screens in the appropriate order to display on the site. Because as you can imagine, a screen like the shuttle will be here in 5 minutes. If it doesn't show at the right minute, that's not going to be really helpful for people. So there's some rules in place to make sure, for instance, that those shuttle attract screens sort of get precedence over the other screens and will appear at the right time so that a person who sees that message isn't surprised when the shuttle has already left when they arrive at the stop.
There's also data that we include, like the walking distance, the walking time between the screen location and the shuttle stop. So, even though a building might have a shuttle stop right out in front. If the screen is a 5-minute walk
And
through
up
that building,
3 flights of stairs.
right, then and we store in the configuration file basically the time that it will take to walk from that screen to the shuttle stop, so it calibrates that when it's giving people the time zones.
Yeah, so if the screen is on the 5th floor, it's not going to tell you, it's not going to warn you that the shuttle is arriving in a minute. So because it wouldn't be really helpful if you had to sprint down the stairwell to try to make that shuttle. And I guess that's it for this. Okay, so that's the screen at the digital signage website as it is now. What's next for us is we want to add some new attract screens because some of them, like that people attract screen, are not so interesting. So I think I originally thought it might be creepy to show people profiles, but it turns out that that's what a lot of the departments want to do on these screens anyway. So I think we should probably introduce some kind of featured people meet our faculty and staff screen that just highlights one person and maybe gives a little truncated bio.
Or new awards if someone wins an
Yeah.
award or publishes something new.
Yep. So something like that would be really cool. I would love to have a responsive version of the site that could actually work in some way. It kind of works on a desktop if you have a large monitor. It doesn't work so well on a laptop, at least the attract screens, and you're not going to be able to do anything on a mobile phone right now. So coming up with a mobile version of the site that would be helpful for people. Maybe just make a little app shortcut that leads to it or something so people could easily access it might be helpful. One thing we wanted to include at launch but we weren't able to was an integration with Yale Alerts. I guess right now there's not actually any supported feed for us to get alerts in like an RSS
It's a
or
battle I'm currently fighting.
with the emergency management
The emergency
department.
management office moved to a new software that no longer makes available data feeds when there's an emergency alert. So we're trying to partner with them to fix that. People sometimes forget that visitors. We have a lot of visitors at the School of Medicine. We have patients. We have tons of visitors at the School of Medicine, and they don't necessarily have a cell phone that's going to get an emergency alert or a Yale email that's going to get an emergency alert. So we feel that these screens are integral to emergency alerts, especially if there was ever an active shooter situation on campus. So we have designs and we have the platform built out to accept data feeds. We're just trying to work with Yale to get that information. So if anyone else wants to do something similar, if you could help lobby,
Yes.
we would greatly appreciate it.
Strength in numbers would be appreciated. And then some additional accessibility considerations. So for example, we tested the colors and the contrast. You'll notice if you see an alert from a yellow Yale shuttle, it's not really yellow because it turns out yellow font doesn't work so well. But it'd be nice to have some. Obviously, if you have somebody who's visually impaired or blind, the screen is not really going to be very helpful to them. So it would be nice if we could have, one benefit of the responsive site would be, as long as somebody who's visually impaired has a phone that's configured to properly read a website, and we set up the website to perform well with screen readers, and that would really solve that problem right there. We don't have a great solution for that right now. But enhancing this website to be more accessible would be one of our other next steps. And that's really all I have. So if you guys have more questions or